My name is Morio. I'm 29 years old, and what I'm about to share with you isn't just my side of the story. It's the only side that ever made sense. But no one cared to hear it. Not at the funeral, not before, and certainly not after the will was read. They just saw the young woman in black, standing too close to a man nearly twice her age. And they whispered "gold digger" over and over again. Like that word explained everything about me, erased every moment we'd shared, every quiet touch, every fight, every night I sat by his hospital bed when even his family had stopped visiting. But I get it. It looked wrong from the outside. I was never supposed to fall in love with a man like Henry. Not in this town. Not with his last name. Not with mine. I met Henry De Laurentiis when I was 24 and broke, emotionally and financially. I had just moved from a tiny apartment in Ohio to Charleston, South Carolina, chasing a freelance gig that turned into a disaster within a month. My degree in design hadn't gotten me far, and the agency I was supposed to work for folded before my first paycheck. The only place hiring was a historic estate restoration firm looking for someone to digitize old architectural drawings and scan piles of hand-drafted maps. The job paid peanuts, but the office was quiet, the building was beautiful, and the man who interviewed me was intimidating. Henry didn't smile easily. He was in his late 40s, handsome in a way you didn't notice at first glance, more presence than looks. You felt him enter a room before you saw him. Salt and pepper hair, crisp shirts, expensive watches. His eyes were sharp, a little tired, and a little sad. He was one of the company's co-founders, but he didn't act like the boss. He took his coffee in silence, never interrupted meetings, and always held the elevator for me, every morning. I was just the girl with the scanner to everyone else. But he remembered my name by day 2. It wasn't love at first sight. Not even close. It started with one conversation. Then 2. Then casual jokes when I'd stay late and he'd pretend to scold me for working overtime. Then, one Friday night, I forgot my wallet at my desk and realized it only after I'd already locked up and reached the bus stop. I stood there in the cold for 15 minutes before his black Range Rover pulled up beside me. "You're not walking home in this," he said, not asking. I hesitated. Maybe I should have said no. Maybe everything would have been different. But I got in. That ride turned into small talks. Those talks turned into coffee runs. Eventually, coffee turned into Sunday dinners. It was slow, private, nothing physical for nearly a year. But I knew I was falling before I could stop it. And he saw through me. The way no one ever had. "You always pretend you're okay," he said once, out of nowhere, while we were walking through the park. "But you carry grief like it's stitched into your bones." I didn't know what to say. He knew about my mother. About how I'd taken care of her through her cancer. About how I'd been alone since she died. He knew I didn't talk about my father, because there was nothing to say. He never asked for anything. Never made me feel small. Never made me feel like a charity case, even when he helped me get a better place to live. Even when he paid for my health insurance out of pocket just so I could see a therapist without worrying about the bill. And for 3 years I loved him. Quietly. Deeply. But never loud enough to be respected. Because when he got sick, when the diagnosis came and things started unraveling, I saw just how much I didn't belong in his world. His sister, Vanessa, flew in from New York. She called me the help to my face, even though I hadn't worked for his company in over a year. His cousin made comments about how quickly the young ones circle when money's in the air. A former friend of his said, "She's pretty. I'll give her that." But Henry was always too kind-hearted. They never said it when he was in the room. But I heard them. I always did. And Henry, he told them to stop. Once. But he was tired. He hated conflict. And I didn't want to make his last months harder than they had to be. So I stayed silent. I held his hand through chemo. I shaved his head when he said he didn't want to look half dead and half dignified. I wrote his emails. I answered calls. I watched the man I loved fade in slow motion. And I stayed even though the stairs got colder. Even though they'd whisper in the hall after I left his room. Even though the night nurse once asked me quietly, "Are you his daughter?" The day he died, I didn't cry right away. I'd already cried everything I had while he was still breathing. His family made all the arrangements. I wasn't invited to help. I was barely told the details. The funeral was grand, of course. Expensive flowers, polished wood, custom-printed programs with a photo of him I'd never seen before. I wore the black dress he bought me last Christmas. They told me not to sit in the front row. And I didn't argue. I stood to the side as if I was nothing. As if 3 years had never passed. As if love wasn't real unless you had the right last name. And then came the will. The lawyer read it out loud the day after the funeral. His family sat around the conference table like wolves dressed in pearls and designer suits. His cousins smirked every time my name was mentioned, because yes, I was mentioned. They thought it would be nothing. They thought I'd get a thank you and a check for a few $100. But then the lawyer opened the sealed page, the one Henry had added just a month before he died. And the room changed. Antomario Lynn Carter, I leave the Harper Street estate, all personal belongings within, and a 32% share of my stake in De Laurentiis Restoration Group. Silence. Heavy. Furious. His sister's face went ghost white. His cousin slammed his hand on the table. One woman gasped. And me. I just sat there. Quiet. And for the first time powerful. Because they had no idea what was coming next. They had no idea why he left that house to me. And neither did I, not yet. But the secret was hidden there. Inside that house. Behind a wall only I would know to look at. And if you're still listening, well, I need you to hear it all. Because what came next changed everything. And I'm just getting started. If you've ever been judged for the way you love, if you've ever had people whisper behind your back like they knew your heart better than you, then please don't go yet. Like, comment, share, and stay. I want you to hear the rest. Because this isn't just my story, it could be yours too. If you think you are enough grown to handle this type of dark revenge stories, go and subscribe. I didn't say anything in that conference room. Not a word. I just kept my eyes down on the lawyer's paperwork, though my fingers were trembling as I held the corner of the file. The Harper Street estate, 32% of his company, and all personal belongings within. You would think they'd scream. You'd think they'd demand an explanation right there. But the room went cold in that particular way. Rich, bitter families freeze when they're too stunned to react. It wasn't about the money, they had enough of it. It was about the insult, the audacity, the fact that a girl like me had been written into a legacy they thought was theirs by birthright. Vanessa, his sister, recovered first. She cleared her throat with the kind of sharpness that made it feel like she wanted to slice the air in two. "This must be an error," she said. Her voice was clipped, brittle, forced polite. "It's not," the lawyer replied flatly, not even looking up. Mr. De Laurentiis revised his will with full legal review, and this section was added with 2 witnesses and a video confirmation. Video. Oh, Henry. That must have been the afternoon I saw the notary leaving his study. I thought maybe it was paperwork for the medical bills. I had no idea he was preparing for this. And yet, deep down I should have known. He always planned ahead. He was deliberate like that, even in love. Vanessa turned to me then, slowly like a villain in a slow burn movie. Her face didn't twitch, but her eyes burned through mine. "Did you pressure him for this?" she asked, smooth but acidic. "Convince him you deserved a cut for what? For being a kind nurse." There were muffled scoffs around the table. One man chuckled. Another whispered something behind his hand to the woman beside him. I looked up, only once, and met her eyes. "No," I said softly. "I didn't ask for anything. That was the truth. He never offered and I never hinted. I thought I would leave his life with nothing but grief. I was ready for that. I had been bracing for that. But clearly Henry hadn't. The meeting ended quickly after that. They wanted to argue, but the lawyer reminded them that the will was final unless they wanted to contest it through court, and that wouldn't go in their favor. Henry's video left no room for interpretation. His voice was calm, his face pale but proud as he explained, in a recording that would probably haunt them forever, exactly why I was listed. She stayed when others left. She saw me when I couldn't see myself anymore, he said. And she reminded me who I was long after I'd forgotten. This isn't a reward. It's a recognition. I barely remembered the drive to the estate. Felt like walking into a different life. The old colonial house on Harper Street stood like a relic of a different century, with ivy crawling up its stone walls and wooden shutters that creaked in the wind. I hadn't visited often, it felt like too much. Too close to him. But now it was mine. Or at least that's what the paperwork said. It didn't feel real until I opened the door and walked inside. The house smelled like lemon polish and cedarwood, just like it always had. The furniture hadn't been touched. The photo of him and his dog Jasper still sat on the hallway table. His reading glasses were still on the kitchen counter. But something else hit me as I stood in the quiet. This place wasn't just filled with memories. It was hiding something. Henry was meticulous. Every room had a purpose. Every shelf a system. But now something felt out of place. A den. Started there. That room had always been off limits, even when we were close. He'd let me pass through it but never linger. I once asked why he kept the door locked. He smiled and said, "It's just a bunch of dusty blueprints and old family clutter. Nothing romantic." I hadn't thought about it since. But now the door was open, and the light was on. Froze. I hadn't turned anything on. I stepped in slowly, my heart thudding in my ears. The room was dim, with floor-to-ceiling shelves stacked with boxes, rolled documents, old cameras, leather-bound books. And then I saw it. A single envelope on the desk. My name written across the front in his handwriting. I reached for it with shaking fingers. Inside was a note, short, almost rushed. "If you're reading this, then you've found your way in. But there's something here they don't know about. Something even I wasn't supposed to keep. Look behind the map of Charleston. The original print. You'll know what to do once you see it." I looked up. On the wall opposite the desk hung a massive map, framed in glass, of old Charleston in the 1800s. I'd always thought it was just decoration. But now, I stepped closer, gently lifted the frame off its hook. The map was heavier than expected. I flipped it around. And there it was. Panel. Slightly recessed. A small keyhole beneath a carved wood emblem. I didn't have the key. But I knew who might. Henry's desk drawer. I opened it, rummaging through pens, receipts, a broken watch. Nothing. Then, at the back, beneath a velvet-lined box of cufflinks, I found a small brass key tied with a red thread. Fit. The panel clicked open with a low, hollow pop. Inside was a leather journal, old, worn, with pages curled and edges stained. Tucked inside the front was a photograph, faded but clear enough to recognize him. Henry. And someone else. A young woman, maybe late 20s. Holding a baby. The date on the back was from 1993. 12 years before I met him. That night I stayed up reading. And what I found shook me. He had a son. Secret son. Born out of wedlock. Hidden because of the family name. Because of inheritance. Because of image. The mother, Grace, was someone he'd loved deeply, but who had left the city when his family rejected her. And the baby. Henry never found him again. But he wrote letters. Dozens. None sent. He wrote to that child like he was writing to a ghost. Describing his days, his regrets, his fears. And one line, scribbled with more force than the rest, echoed in my mind all night. If I can't give him the life he deserved, maybe I can give someone else the truth. The truth. That's what this was about. The house. The inheritance. The map. The journal. It wasn't about rewarding me. It was about passing on something. Something buried. Maybe even hidden from the rest of the family. I knew then that the next step wasn't just to grieve Henry. It was to find that missing son. To find out why no one ever mentioned him. And to uncover why Henry never stopped writing, even after decades had passed. But first I needed to know if anyone else knew. Because if they did, they were going to come for me. If you're still with me, you probably feel what I felt. That slow, crawling unease that maybe, just maybe, someone else had been watching all along. Like, comment, and tell me, have you ever found something you were never meant to see? Stay with me, because what I found next inside that journal was a name I'd heard before. And not in a good way. I barely slept that night. The journal lay open on the kitchen table, pages fluttering every time the old heater kicked in. I couldn't stop rereading his words. Henry's letters to the son he never met. The house felt different now. Every creak in the floorboards, every shadow in the hallway, made me turn my head twice. Maybe it was the grief. Or maybe it was that feeling I couldn't shake, that someone else had been in that room before me. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to tell anyone what I'd found. Not yet. Not the lawyer, not the press, and especially not Henry's family. I needed time. Time to make sense of it. Time to figure out what this meant. And most of all, time to find that missing name. I opened the journal again just after sunrise, wrapped in an old hoodie and clutching a mug of black coffee like it was my only weapon. I flipped through the pages slowly this time, scanning each letter for clues. Most entries were raw and aching, like Henry was trying to father a ghost. But a few stood out, sharper, more urgent. And on one page, near the back, he wrote something I hadn't noticed last night. Grace called once, in '07. Said she'd moved to Oregon. Said he was asking questions. Panic. Told her not to give him my name. I shouldn't have. My heart thudded. He knew his son was looking for him. 18 years later, that boy had started to search. And Henry told her to stop him. Why? What was he afraid of? I flipped another page. There it was. Name. It was scribbled in the margin like he hadn't meant to write it at all. Nolan. His name is Nolan. I whispered it aloud. Nolan. It hit the air like something heavy. I stood up too fast, the chair scraping against the wood. Nolan. Where had I heard that name before? I searched the house for any trace. Photos, letters, anything. But there was nothing. The journal was the only thread I had. So I did what any desperate, exhausted woman would do at 7 a.m. on no sleep and a gut full of grief. I Googled it. Nolan De Laurentiis. Nolan Grace. Nolan, Oregon. Nothing. Not right away. But then, buried in an old blog article from a Portland tech incubator, I found something. Photo. Man. Late 20s. Dark hair, sharp jaw, tired eyes. His name. Nolan Gray. Founder of a startup called August Systems. A small UX-based firm for hospital record-keeping apps. No mention of a father. Just raised by a single mother. Moved to Portland in 2003. Rebranded as August Systems in 2021. My hands shook. UX design. Henry's passion. His field. His legacy. That wasn't a coincidence. I clicked on the company website. Clean layout. Professional. Minimal color. A section about our story. No mention of family. Just values. But in the contact tab there it was. Single email. So I wrote it. I didn't even think. Just wrote. Subject. Your mother knew Henry De Laurentiis. Message. Nolan. I know this is strange. My name is Morio. I was close to Henry, very close. He passed recently and I found something he left behind. Something about you. I don't want anything from you. I just think you deserve to know. If you're open to a call or a meeting, please write back. I'm in Charleston. Morio. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I closed the laptop, folded my arms on the table, and laid my head down. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes again, the room was brighter, and there was a sound at the door. Knock. Dark. Insistent. Froze. No one knocked on this door. I wasn't listed publicly. I hadn't told anyone from Henry's family I was staying here permanently. And the only people who knew where I was were the lawyer, and maybe the people who didn't want me here. I stood slowly and walked to the door. Outside stood Vanessa. wearing a coat that probably cost more than my car. Her arms folded across her chest like she was freezing from disgust more than weather. "May I come in?" she asked, tone like a blade. I hesitated, but I stepped aside. She walked in like she still owned the place. Paused in the foyer looking around. "I see you haven't changed anything," she said. I said nothing. She turned to me then. Straightened her shoulders. "I'll be brief. I don't care about the house. Not really. But the company. The shares Henry left you." Her lips curled. "That's a problem." I swallowed. "You can contest it," I said. "But it won't work. You know that." "I'm not here to contest," she snapped. "I'm here to buy. I'll have my lawyer draft a sale agreement. Full cash offer. You sign, you walk away." My heart thudded louder than her voice. "Why now?" "Yes. Why the rush?" I paused. Just for a second. But it was enough. "There are things you don't understand about the business," she said. "And I'd rather not see Henry's name get dragged through something avoidable." Avoidable. That word stayed with me. What was she hiding? I looked her in the eye and said something I hadn't planned to say. "I found the journal." Her face didn't move, but her pupils shrank. Just slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." I stepped closer. "I know about Nolan. I know about Grace. I know Henry never stopped thinking about them. And I know there's something here you don't want anyone else to find." The silence stretched between us. Finally she gave a soft, cold smile. "You think you're ready for that world, Mario?" she asked. "You have no idea what Henry was part of. What you're now part of." She turned to leave, but just before walking out, she said without looking back. "He kept you in the dark for a reason. Be careful what you try to shine a light on." The door closed behind her like a warning shot. And I stood there, notebook in hand, wondering just how deep this rabbit hole went. That night I checked my inbox again. Reply. From Nolan. Just 4 words. "I'm listening. Who are you?" My hands shook as I began to type. I wasn't sure what to tell him, or how much to say. But if you've ever discovered a secret that changes the way you remember someone you loved, you know how this feels. Please leave a comment. Tell me what you'd do if you were me. And stick around. The next thing I told Nolan. It changed everything. I stared at Nolan's reply longer than I'd like to admit. "I'm listening. Who are you?" Simple. Direct. Not warm, not cold. Just cautious, like a man who's learned not to trust too easily. I couldn't blame him. I reread my original email and winced. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I should have waited. But there was no taking it back. Type slowly. "My name is Mario Carter. I was close to your father, Henry. Very close. I was with him during his illness. He passed last week. Found something. A journal he left. You're mentioned in it. I know this is overwhelming. If you want proof I can send it. Or we can talk. Your call." I didn't expect a fast response. But it came just 10 minutes later. "I'm free in 20. Zoom okay?" My pulse spiked. Face. With Henry's son. I scrambled, brushed my hair, changed out of the hoodie I'd been living in for days, and set my laptop up in the least haunted-looking corner of the house. I lit a candle to calm my nerves. It didn't help. When the call rang I clicked join before I could second-guess myself. And there he was. Nolan Gray. His face looked younger than the press photo, though still weighed down by something you couldn't quite name. He was wearing a dark sweatshirt, sitting in what looked like a tiny studio apartment kitchen. Behind him, shelves stacked with books and wires. No art. No plants. No signs of family. "Hi," I said softly. He gave a polite nod. "You have 60 seconds before I consider this spam. Go." I swallowed hard. Fair enough. I was Henry's partner for the last 3 years. We weren't married, and most people pretended I didn't exist. But he left me the house. And part of his company. That got a reaction. Nolan blinked. "He left you part of De Laurentiis Restoration." He nodded. "I know this is weird. But in the house I found a journal he kept. He wrote about you. About Grace. About a call she made in 2007. About how he regretted staying away. I held the leather journal up to the camera. Nolan's face stayed unreadable, but I saw something flicker behind his eyes. "Can you read me a line?" he asked. I opened to the page with the name. My hands trembled slightly. Nolan. His name is Nolan. Grace told me he was asking questions. Panic. Told her not to give him my name. I shouldn't have. Silence. Nolan leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. He knew. Yes, I whispered. And he never stopped writing to you. I thought I was crazy, he said quietly. All these years I thought maybe I made it up. The vibe. The weird silences when I asked questions. My mom always said he was just a man she knew once. That it didn't matter. That I didn't need to know. But you always wanted to. He didn't respond. Instead he said, "Why are you telling me all this? What do you want?" "I don't want anything. I just think maybe you deserve to know the whole truth. And there's more. Something is wrong here." His sister, Vanessa, came by the house yesterday. She offered to buy me out. Urgently. Nolan frowned. Why? She said the company was in trouble. But I don't buy it. She looked scared. Like there was something in this house she didn't want me to find. His eyes sharpened. "And did you?" He hesitated. Then I reached off camera and lifted something into view. A second envelope. Muller. Labeled with 2 letters, NG. "I found this hidden in the journal sleeve," I said. "I haven't opened it yet." His face paled slightly. "That's my initials," he said. "I know." Waited. Slowly I peeled open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Nolan. If Morio found you, it means she trusts you. And if you're reading this, it means I trust you too. Asterisk asterisk. There are people in the company who've done things I couldn't stop. I kept silent to protect what I built, but I was wrong. I should have burned it all down. What you'll find in the basement file cabinet, Section B, Folder 3, is proof of what they were doing, and what they plan to do next. Do with it what I never could. Forgive me. Dad asterisk asterisk. I looked up slowly. Nolan was already grabbing a pen. Section B, Folder 3, he repeated. You believe this? He nodded once. Yes. My mother once told me the reason she left Henry wasn't just because of his family. She said she saw something in his office. Something about overseas money and an under-the-table deal for a historical site restoration that didn't add up. What kind of deal? I don't know. She wouldn't say. But she said if I ever got close to him, I should be careful who I trusted. Especially his sister. That cold feeling crept back up my spine. There was something in this house. Something worth hiding. I'll find it, I told him. I'll look tonight. Nolan hesitated. Then his voice softened. You cared about him. I met his eyes. More than anyone ever let me admit. His jaw clenched then relaxed. So did I. Even without knowing him. The call ended with no promises. Just a fragile thread between two people trying to piece together the wreckage of a life neither fully understood. That night I went to the basement. The cabinet was old and metal, dusty, tucked behind a broken lamp and boxes of outdated blueprints. Section B, Folder 3. I opened it and froze. Inside were documents, emails, invoices, memos, all referencing a restoration deal for a historical shipyard. And payments made to shell companies that led straight to, I couldn't believe it, Vanessa's husband. And a local councilman whose name had come up in Henry's last board meeting. Fraud, bribery, cover-ups. Henry knew. He knew everything and he didn't stop them. Because they threatened to tear the company apart. I sank to the floor, folder in my lap, heart pounding like it might crack my ribs open. I had the truth. I had the proof. And now, I had to decide what to do with it. If you were me, what would you do? Would you protect his legacy? Or expose the truth and risk losing it all? like, comment, share, because what I do next doesn't just change my future. It changes Henry's past. The folder sat on my lap like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I just sat there on the cold basement floor, my hands trembling over papers that could dismantle a legacy, or maybe rewrite it entirely. Emails, invoices, emails, wire transfers. It was all there. Bribery, political payoffs, phony restoration expenses, and names. So many names. And in bold letters on more than one document. V. De Laurentiis and Mark Ridley, her husband. This wasn't just some dirty corporate secret. This was intentional fraud tied directly to city contracts and public trust funds. Henry had known. He'd known and tried to keep it quiet, to protect the company, he wrote in one memo, to avoid destroying what generations built. But now it was on me. And all I could think was, what would Nolan do with this? Or worse, what would Vanessa do to stop us? I texted Nolan a photo of the top sheet. Just one. 10 minutes later my phone rang. Tell me that's not real, he said. It's real, I whispered. Silence. Then, we need to meet. In person. When? Tomorrow. I'm flying to Charleston. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house made me jump. Every flash of headlights through the curtains made my heart race. At 2:16 a.m. the doorbell rang. Froze. No one decent rings a doorbell at that hour. I grabbed the fireplace poker, my only weapon, and tiptoed to the door, peeking through the side window. No one there. Just a manila envelope on the doormat. I opened the door slowly, looking around. No car. No footsteps. I picked up the envelope. No name on the front. Inside, a single typed note. You're walking into something you don't understand. Let the dead stay buried. Or you'll be next. My hands went cold. I backed into the hallway, locked every door, pulled every curtain shut. The next morning, Nolan landed. When he arrived at the estate, I opened the door before he even knocked. He looked more tense than he had on video, like someone who hadn't slept either. You got the note? He asked as soon as he stepped in. He nodded. We didn't speak much as I led him to the basement. When he saw the folder with his own eyes, he didn't react at first. But then he reached in and pulled out a black and white photo tucked between two invoices. It was a younger Henry. And beside him, a much younger Vanessa, smiling, holding up a check with the city's Historic Development Board seal behind them. This was the first deal, he said, voice low. I recognize the building. It burned down last year. I flipped over the photo. A handwritten date. 2009. The shipyard scandal your mom hinted at? Yes. He nodded. This is it. And Henry kept it buried. We sat in silence. Then Nolan leaned forward. You realize what this means, right? If this gets out, the company's finished. And so is Vanessa. And her husband. And maybe some people higher up. And Henry's name. I asked quietly. He was silent. Later that day we took a walk through downtown Charleston. He said he needed air. Think we both did. It was warm, humid. People moved around us in slow, lazy weekend rhythm. I felt like I was watching a different world go by. He was a coward, Nolan said suddenly. I glanced at him. He should have told someone. He should have stopped it. He tried, I said softly. In his own way. By hiding it, he snapped. By writing secret letters and praying someone else would clean it up? He left it to you. He stopped walking. His voice dropped. I didn't ask for this, Mario. I didn't ask for his guilt. Or his empire. I just wanted to know who he was. Now I get all of him. The mess too. We sat on a bench across from the harbor. He stared at the water for a while, then said something I wasn't ready for. I don't want the company. I turned to him. What? I don't want it. I don't want the shares, the board seat, the name. I just want this over. But if you walk away, then we bury it, he said. Or we burn it all down. That night Vanessa returned. She didn't knock. She barged in like she owned the air we breathed. I stood in the foyer, Nolan beside me, the folder on the hall table between us like a loaded weapon. "Hello, nephew," she said with venom. "Come to steal your father's fortune." He didn't flinch. "Come to finish his apology." She laughed bitterly. "You think any of this matters? That journal? That woman? None of it changes the truth. Henry was part of this. So are you now." "He left us the choice," I said. "And we're making it." Her face turned cold. "I can bury you both." "I don't think so," Nolan said. He pulled out his phone and tapped something. "Email scheduled," he added. "In 24 hours, everything goes public unless I stop it. City records, news outlets, federal offices." She stepped back stunned. "You wouldn't." "I would," he said. "Why?" she demanded. "To ruin your family." "No," he said. "To finally be one." That night we sat on the porch. Just me and Nolan. The air was still. The threat was quiet but not gone. "Do you think we did the right thing?" "Yes." "I don't know," he admitted. "But I think we did what he couldn't." I nodded slowly. "I think he would have been proud of you." He looked at me, really looked. And for the first time I saw it. Not just the resemblance, but the forgiveness, the healing, the beginning of something real. You ever face a truth so big, it makes you question everything you thought you knew? If you've been with me this far, drop a comment below. Would you have exposed the truth? Or let it die with the man who kept it? And don't go anywhere, because part 6. It's not just about Henry. It's about the future Nolan and I didn't see coming. I used to think peace would come like a wave. Sudden, cleansing, obvious, but real peace. Arrives like a whisper, a slow unfurling. Quiet moments one after another that make you feel like maybe, just maybe you can breathe again. The days after Vanessa's last visit were strangely still. No more threats, no late-night calls, no mysterious knocks, just quiet. Nolan extended his trip. Said he needed time to think. But I think he needed something else too, belonging. Or maybe just the kind of silence that lets you stop fighting long enough to feel what's been waiting under the surface. We didn't talk much about the documents anymore. The scheduled email, still set. But Nolan adjusted the send time each day, pushing it back. Waiting. Maybe hoping Vanessa would leave us both alone for good. One morning, I found him standing in the kitchen in Henry's old flannel robe, sipping coffee and staring out the window like he'd lived there for years. "You're gonna have to stop stealing my mugs," I teased, setting down a fresh plate of toast. He smiled but faintly. "You realize this might be the most stable I've felt in 10 years. I leaned on the counter. "Then why does it feel like something's still coming?" "'Cause it was. I could feel it in my bones. Something wasn't done. Something was still hiding." That afternoon, Nolan asked if we could go to the attic. "The attic?" said. "What for?" I shrugged. "I don't know. I keep thinking about that photo, the one from 2009. Check. There might be more up there." It was dusty, cramped, full of old trunks and half-labeled boxes. The light bulb overhead flickered like it didn't want to be involved. We split up. I sorted through one of Henry's travel trunks while Nolan rifled through old estate blueprints. But it was a shallow drawer tucked into the far end of a wardrobe that finally gave us something new. Inside it, a thick, sealed envelope, yellowed with age. On the front, Henry's handwriting. "If they come for you, give them this instead." "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Nolan opened it carefully. Inside was a fake ledger. A complete, fabricated version of the shipyard contracts and financial records. Everything neatly arranged. Everything technically legal. Everything fake. "He made a decoy," Nolan muttered. "He was preparing for a takedown but trying to delay the damage. He was stalling. Or trying to give us an out." We both looked at each other. This changed everything. We didn't have to blow it all up. We could use the decoy, protect the company, erase the trail, walk away. Let Vanessa rot in her own guilt, but keep Henry's legacy safe. I could see it in Nolan's face. The relief. The hope. Maybe this is our answer, he said. Maybe it was. But that night everything shifted again. It was 11:42 p.m. when Nolan knocked on my bedroom door. "Mario," he said. "There's something you need to see." He handed me his phone. An email. From someone named Trent Dalton. Subject. "Got the files. As agreed, I'll make sure this never sees daylight. Payment confirmed." Blink. "Who's this?" He took the phone back, jaw clenched. That's what I asked myself. Turns out Nolan had forwarded some of the files, not all, to an old friend of his. Just to test the waters. He never meant to act on it. But now his contact had sold the information. And the worst part. The recipient's IP was traced to London. Vanessa's husband was born there. His company had subsidiaries across the UK. She'd bought the silence. And now they had control of the real evidence. "Nolan," I whispered, "what if the email schedule is pointless now? What if they're already ahead of us?" He didn't respond. Instead, he looked like something broke behind his eyes. "I was trying to protect us," he said. "I didn't think it would turn like this." I stepped closer. "Nolan, look at me. We're not done yet. They might have bought silence, but they haven't erased us." He looked down. "I feel like I just killed him all over again." I shook my head. "No. You're doing what he couldn't. You're trying. That's more than he ever gave you." The next day we drove to the city. Nolan wanted to meet someone, a friend of his mother's who used to work for the State Historic Preservation Board. "Mom told me once," he said as we drove, "that this woman was the only one who ever believed her. Her name was Patricia Hale. Late 60s. Retired. Lived in a quiet duplex on the edge of Charleston with a gray cat and a sharper memory than either of us expected." When Nolan explained who he was, her eyes lit up with something fierce. "I knew it," she whispered. "I always knew he had a child." She poured tea like we were family, then leaned back in her chair. "Back in '08, we had this sudden influx of grants. Big ones. More than usual. And the De Laurentiis Foundation kept getting all the big contracts. Henry was the face, but Vanessa, she was the puppet master." "You think she manipulated the system?" "Yes. She bought it," Patricia replied. "That shipyard. It wasn't even supposed to qualify. But somehow it did. And Henry, he was so charming. So convincing. But by the end I think it broke him." He paused. Then reached into a folder and handed Nolan a faded letter. His mother's handwriting. "If Nolan ever finds you, tell him I never stopped fighting for the truth. And I never stopped loving his father, no matter how messy it all got." Nolan's hands trembled. "I should have come sooner," he said. Patricia smiled gently. "You came when you were ready." That night we sat by the fireplace. No more secrets between us. Just warmth, honesty, the fragile bloom of trust. He looked at me for a long time. Then said, "You've done more for him than anyone ever did when he was alive." "So did you." He reached out. His fingers brushed mine. And in that moment, I swear, I forgot all the noise. Just him. Just us. Two broken people standing in the ruins of someone else's life, trying to build something new. But peace never stays long. The next morning I opened the door to get the mail. There was no letter, just a card, black, with silver lettering. "See you in court, VD. You think it's over when the truth comes out. It's not. Sometimes that's when the real war begins." If you've ever fought for someone's name, even when they couldn't, drop a comment, leave a like and stay with me. Because in part 7, the courtroom becomes the battlefield. And Henry's legacy is about to be tested. The courtroom wasn't how I imagined it. It wasn't grand or dramatic. It smelled faintly of printer ink and old carpet. The chairs squeaked. The lights flickered. A small-town courtroom dressed up for something much bigger than it was built for. But I wasn't fooled. This room, this tired little space, was about to become the stage where reputations shattered, alliances snapped, and the ghost of a man named Henry De Laurentiis finally stood trial, whether the law acknowledged him or not. Vanessa sat across the aisle. Impeccable black suit. Thin smile. No sign of fear. Just the polished coldness of someone who'd played this game for decades and never lost. Nolan sat beside me. Not in the pews. Not in the gallery. At the defense table. Because she wasn't just suing me anymore. She was suing both of us. Fraud. Defamation. Theft of intellectual property. Breach of trust. The list went on. According to Vanessa, we had misappropriated sensitive company documents, interfered in corporate operations, and violated the legacy and last will of Henry De Laurentiis by claiming familial connection without evidence. In short, she was trying to erase Nolan. Again. She was trying to strip him of the name Henry left behind. She was trying to silence me forever. The judge entered, older, sharp-eyed, clearly tired of dramatic family cases. But even he raised an eyebrow when Vanessa's lawyer requested an emergency injunction to seize control of all company shares, revoke the inheritance, and force a cease and desist on public discussion of the will. In other words, she wanted us gagged, broke, and out. I watched her as the lawyer read through their evidence. Emails, press releases, Nolan's scheduled leak that never went out, even screenshots from our Zoom call, somehow leaked. She'd been watching us the entire time. Nolan leaned in. "She's bluffing," he whispered. "She has no DNA proof. No journal. No copies of the original files." "I hope you're right," I murmured. But in truth, I wasn't sure. Because in that moment, when Vanessa stood to testify, voice smooth and confident, something inside me twisted. She wasn't acting like someone scrambling. She was acting like someone waiting for a reveal. And that's when it happened. "Your Honor," Vanessa said smoothly, "before we proceed, I'd like to enter a final piece of evidence into the record." I turned, and my blood turned to ice. A man stepped forward from the gallery. Clean-cut, confident. The courtroom gasped softly as he approached the bench. "This," Vanessa said with a chilling smile, "is Matthew De Laurentiis, Henry's legal son. The one listed on his private trust account, created years before this gold digger inserted herself into our family." Froze. What? She didn't just come for Nolan. She had brought someone to replace him. A legitimate heir. A man we'd never heard of. Never met. Who wasn't mentioned in Henry's will. Yet somehow had surfaced now with perfect timing and the legal papers to match. Outside the courtroom, I pulled Nolan aside. "She's playing dirty. This man, he's a setup. I can feel it." He rubbed his temples. "But if the documents hold in court, she buries us," I finished. "I need air," he muttered. We stepped outside. Across the street, a reporter snapped photos of us. Another held up a mic shouting, "Mr. Gray, are you really Henry's son or just a man playing one on social media?" Nolan turned to me, his voice low and shaking. "I'm done letting her win. No more defense. It's time we went on the offensive." Blinked. "With what?" He pulled out his phone. The journal. The real DNA test results. And the one person she didn't think would ever testify, Patricia. That's when I realized. He'd been one step ahead. While I panicked, he'd planned. He'd spent the last 2 days preparing our case. Not just to defend, but to prove Henry's blood ran through his veins. To prove Vanessa's entire story was a calculated lie. The next day in court, everything shifted. We called Patricia Hale to the stand. Teddy. She told the court about Henry's guilt, his journal, the private letters Nolan's mother had written. We entered the DNA results. Sealed, authenticated. And then Nolan did the unthinkable. He asked to speak. He stood alone, eyes clear, voice low but powerful. "My father died carrying secrets. And the person who cared for him at the end. Morio, she didn't want power. She wanted peace. But peace doesn't come from lies. And neither does legacy." He held up Henry's journal. He wrote to me in here. Page after page. His fears. His regrets. His wish for me to know him, maybe even forgive him. You can burn a man's house, steal his company, erase his name from contracts. But you cannot erase blood. You cannot erase truth. The courtroom was silent. Even Vanessa didn't blink. She didn't have to. Because as the judge requested closing arguments, her lawyer pulled her aside. And seconds later, they withdrew the suit. Just like that. Vanessa didn't lose. She surrendered. Because the minute Nolan showed he wouldn't back down, she knew her empire of shadows would collapse. After court, we stood outside as reporters swarmed. But Nolan turned to me, shielding me from the cameras. And then he kissed me. No plan. No warning. Just something raw and honest that had been building under all the noise. When it ended, he leaned his forehead against mine. You didn't just protect his name, he whispered. You gave it a future. And for the first time I felt it. Not like a whisper, but like a wave. Real peace. They tried to silence us. Tried to erase us. But the truth has its own voice. And you've heard it now. Drop a comment if you've ever had to fight for someone's name, even after they were gone. Like, share, and stay tuned because part 8 is coming. And what comes after truth? Something even more dangerous. Inheritance. They say after the storm comes calm. But no one ever tells you what to do during the calm, especially when your entire life was the storm. After the lawsuit was dropped, Nolan and I were left in a strange kind of silence. Not relief. Not victory. Just the quiet realization that the man who caused all this chaos wasn't here to see any of it. Henry De Laurentiis. I used to hate his name. Well, I wasn't so sure. We returned to the house that evening, our house now. Nolan didn't go back to New York. He didn't even pack a bag. He just stayed. Like the air here had finally cleared enough for him to exhale. The paper fragile. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. And read. If you're reading this, it means the truth has reached you. I hope it didn't break you. I hope you're still standing. I never knew how to say thank you for the way you made me feel human again. But I left you something that might. In the bottom drawer of my study desk, behind the false panel, is a box. Inside it is a contract I never filed. One that gives you 49% of everything I built. De Laurentiis Holdings, the restoration fund, the property estate. Not out of guilt, not even love, but because you earned it. You were the only one who didn't want anything from me. And yet gave me peace I never deserved. If Nolan ever learns the truth about who he is, and if he forgives me, give him my half. The rest belongs to you. This is the last thing I'll ask. Don't let them take Lena. Not her innocence. Not her heart. Love her in the daylight like I never could in the shadows. Goodbye, Morio. Henry. I didn't cry. Not right away. I walked to his study. A drawer. Panel. And just like he said, there it was. A small fireproof box. Covered in dust. The contract inside was real. Dated. Witnessed. He'd never filed it. Maybe he got scared. Maybe he changed his mind. Or maybe he was waiting for me to become the kind of person who could carry it. I wasn't just the girl they called a gold digger anymore. I was a co-owner. I was someone who mattered. Nolan came home that night to find me standing in the study, holding the paper. He read it, said nothing, then hugged me like it was the first time. I told you, he whispered. He knew who you were. He nodded. He knew who we both were. 6 months later, De Laurentiis Holdings rebranded. We renamed the company Carter and Gray. Not for ego. For honesty. For the blood and the scars and the stories behind those names. Lena cut the ribbon at the relaunch event. The reporters called it poetic. Called it earned. And later that night, as we sat on the back porch, her small head resting in my lap, Nolan beside me, I realized something. They never hated me because I lied. They hated me because I stayed. Because I dared to survive in a world they swore would crush me. But the truth didn't just set me free. It rebuilt everything. And now that you've walked every step of this journey with me, don't scroll away. If you've ever been judged by your silence, If you've ever been underestimated, called names, or had your story twisted before you could speak, this is your channel. Only the grown-ups. Yes, I mean you, the ones who crave deeper, realer revenge stories with more twists and more truth. Only you should subscribe now. Subscribe now. Because the next tale, it's deeper, realer, and it might just be yours.